Hi, my name is Sarah. I work for the Region of Waterloo Library, and I'm glad you've joined me for a song. Today we're going to join Henry and Liza as we sing the classic song, There's a Hole in My Bucket. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, a hole. Then fix it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Then fix it, dear Henry, fix it. With what shall I fix it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I fix it, dear Liza? With what? With straw, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With straw, dear Henry, with straw. But the straw is too long, dear Liza, dear Liza. But the straw is too long, dear Liza, too long. Then cut it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Then cut it, dear Henry, cut it. With what shall I cut it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I cut it, dear Liza? With what? With a knife, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With a knife, dear Henry, a knife. But the knife is too dull, dear Liza, dear Liza. But the knife is too dull, dear Liza, too dull. Then sharpen it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Then sharpen it, dear Henry, sharpen it. With what shall I sharpen it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I sharpen it, dear Liza? With what? With a stone, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With a stone, dear Henry, a stone. But the stone is too dry, dear Liza, dear Liza. But the stone is too dry, dear Liza, too dry. Then wet it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Then wet it, dear Henry, wet it. With what shall I wet it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I wet it, dear Liza? With what? With water, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With water, dear Henry, water. With what shall I fetch it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I fetch it, dear Liza? With what? With a bucket, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With a bucket, dear Henry, a bucket. But there's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, a hole. If you enjoy the circular logic in that song, you might enjoy these books by Laura Numeroff. If you give a moose a muffin, if you give a mouse a brownie. Or if there are things in that song that just don't make sense to you, you might appreciate a visit to Doon Heritage Village, which is part of the Ken Sealing Waterloo Regional Museum. You can borrow a pass to the museum from the Region of Waterloo Library so that your family can visit for free. Please make sure, though, to check the museum website to make sure they're open before planning your visit. Thanks for joining me. Please visit our website at rwlibrary.ca, and you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.